Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network is brought to you by ZipRecruiter, our 2018 presenting sponsor, and somebody who is almost as accomplished as one of our guests on today's podcast, the great Hall of Famer Al Pacino. Someday ZipRecruiter will be the Al Pacino of what they do. Guess what they do? 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within a day. They are the best at distributing your job to the best boards, identifying the right people, and inviting them to apply. Right now, they're in the same run that Al Pacino was in the 70s when he was just ripping off great movies all the time. My listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Meanwhile, SeatGeek, the best app for buying and selling tickets to sporting events, concerts, and more, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on any game or sporting event for NBA, NHL, regular season Major League Baseball. That's coming. Whatever you want to do, you know what to do. Use promo code BS, download the SeatGeek app, or go right to SeatGeek.com. Finally, spring training is in full swing. It is time to start thinking Yahoo Fantasy Baseball Drafts. Flex your skills as a real GM. The new weekly lineup format makes it even easier. Use the Set Active Players feature to set your lineup up for the week in one tap. The Yahoo Fantasy Baseball right now, the official fantasy game of Major League Baseball. Sign up right now at yahoo.com/fantasy baseball. Speaking of baseball, we brought back the Ringer MLB show to life. We had 2 podcasts last week. We have over-unders for the wins, the best picks in every division, coming this week. On Thursday, Jacko and I, we did a podcast, my old buddy, and I roasted the 2018 Yankees, and he tried to defend them. We might have to do the same thing this week with the Red Sox. But check it out. Subscribe to that. Also, subscribe to the Recapables, which we launched a new show for yesterday on top of the show we already had. We were doing Atlanta, and now me and Mallory Rubin, every Sunday night, right after Billions ends on Showtime, we do our Recapables podcast that goes right up. Show ends, Recapables podcast, live. Me and Mallory, we did 35 minutes on episode 1, which featured, let's just say, Mr. and Mrs. Martinez scarred me for life. We'll go into that and a bunch of other stuff on that podcast. It's available right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget about theringer.com, covering March Madness this week. First week of baseball, NBA playoffs coming, NBA awards season coming. This is kind of our time right now. Check it out, theringer.com right now. Al Pacino and Barry Levinson, 2 of the greats. Barry Levinson, one of the most accomplished directors of the last 40 years. Al Pacino, one of the great actors of all time. They came in, we taped it last week. They were here for about an hour and 10 minutes, and it was a true highlight. Here it is, but first, Pearl Jam. All right, here with Al Pacino and Barry Levinson. They did the Paterno movie for HBO. I was telling Barry, we did a podcast in 2009, back when people barely knew what a podcast was, because you were one of the first 30 for 30s.
I know. It's so bizarre.
I remember when we got him, it was really hard to get the series going, and we needed like a couple named directors. And then we went to pitch you on something else. And you're like, I've always been fascinated by the Ravens marching band. And we're like, all right. Or the Colts marching band. And
but you're like, Ravens.
Right. No, he's a Baltimore guy, and they left, but ends up doing it. And once we got you, the seas parted, and we were able to get and then all of a sudden we were able to get some people.
Oh, no kidding.
You were like the pipital guy that we got.
Wow.
You didn't even know.
I didn't know.
Yeah, because as soon as we got
I knew
him,
that,
now
Barry.
I'm excited.
I didn't want to tell you. Ready? Surprise, everyone. Come on out.
as soon as we got him, we could go into the other meetings and go,
Yeah.
we got Barry Levinson, he's in. And then they'd be like, really? You got Barry? And then all of a sudden you get one more, and then you start listing off
funny,
names.
a term that no one ever heard, podcast.
Yeah. We launched that. I had my own podcast, but then we launched our own 30 for 30 podcast series to try to be like a director's commentary. It was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Now everybody has a podcast. You must have been on a podcast, Al. No?
I've been everywhere, I think.
You must have
But
done
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I have, though. I turn up from time to time, and people say, I say, how did I get there? How did that happen? And then, of course, there's the 70s, which I have no recollection. I have no recollection of.
Were you a recluse with promoting movies and stuff in the 70s?
Of course.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, that was sort of the style at that time.
Less is more?
That was the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, even going to the Oscars was something that you sort of didn't do. It wasn't cool or something. Yeah. We all followed what Marlon did. Brando led us all astray.
I don't remember actors, actresses, or directors talking about movies at all back in the 60s or 70s. I don't remember that.
Just didn't happen.
No.
There was definitely more of a mystery back then with the stars.
I think also back then, it didn't matter that much if you went wherever you went. I mean, people either went to the movies or didn't. Today, there's so many outlets that it does work. It does get people, it makes people become aware of the fact that there's a film out there. But in the old days, it didn't sort of matter, or at least that's what we felt. That's what
because you didn't have many outlets was part of it, because you didn't have any of the cable channels.
No cable channels. And
there was there wasn't really the national radio or the way they connected. It would be city by city by city. But so it's a radically different.
I remember finally I got to do a television show. I had been an actor, known and everything for 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe more. And I finally got my first, I did my first television interview on Good Morning America. And I was, so I come out and I sit down and everything is new and I'm just sitting there, all shy and everything and just sitting quietly. And this guy comes out and he looks at me and he says, "How could you make such a violent, stupid film?"
Oh, no.
That was the opening.
And I said, where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? And I just said, well, something. I don't know what I said, but he was a very nice guy. But he didn't like the film. I think he said stupid. He might not have said stupid. He just said violent.
You remember it now as
I
stupid.
thought that was a stupid thing to say, maybe, But I remember the film, yeah. It just happened to be Scarface, so... here we are.
Right.
Scarface is a good example of a movie that means one thing when it comes out and then takes on this whole other life and then takes on another life after that. Now it's been 35 years and it's like, it's this iconic action movie. But at the time, it was really polarizing. I'm always fascinated by how movies evolve after they've come out, how they're remembered and dissected.
Yes, well, I mean, look, it goes both ways. Some movies that were celebrated that fade away, and there were those that were totally ignored or, reviled in a way that ultimately come up.
Well, not to talk about it too much, but I didn't see it as violence. We didn't see it as violent.
Scarface?
Yes. Don't forget Oliver Stone that wrote it.
Yeah.
And it was this whole assault on this world, the world of greed, the world of avarice, and everything was operatic in its delivery. And this is what Brian De Palma intended.
Yeah.
So we didn't think in terms of, because some commercials are more violent than that film. You have to say the violence was, I guess, was subtextual or something.
It ran through it, but it was operatic.
It was
as opposed to something that would have been, that's more sort of more humanistic. So something that would occur, you would, that was violent would be perceived. This was like over the top, machine guns blowing up the buildings and the thing. I mean, it was, out of control.
There was that chainsaw shower scene. We
don't want to talk about
that. Like, I look at a movie like Rain Man and Hoffman won the Oscar, right? But now when I watch it all these years later, it feels like Cruise had the harder part.
Well, he did. I mean, and
but I don't think people realize that in the moment.
Dustin said it at the time. He said, Tom's got it, because Tom has to push it all along. Otherwise, I'll just keep looking up at the lights on the ceiling or whatever. I mean, so Cruise had to push it all the time. Come on, we're doing this, and we have to find ways so it doesn't be repetitious.
He was great too in that film. Cruise,
Cruise was terrific. But I remember Dustin acknowledging even while we're shooting. So what happens is Dustin ends up with, the flashier role, the character we haven't seen, but Tom's work was really very, very strong.
Well, because he's playing an asshole, but I have to like him by the end of the movie.
Exactly.
Which is pretty much the hardest part
He's a
to
very
play.
good actor, Tom.
Yeah. What movie did you make over the, I don't know, at least 20 years old that you feel like is underrated compared to how it was perceived at the time? Do you have one?
I'd have to think about that. In a few minutes, it'll come to me.
Okay.
I can deal with 50 years. It's hard to deal with 20. You have to then divide. And
I mean, we did one that was really not seen because the distribution company basically disappeared, went out of business when we did The Humbling. And Al, playing this aging actor at the end of his career, based on a Philip Roth book, I think it's a spectacular performance and a real look into the mind and soul of an aging actor trying to deal with the reality that he's surrounded by. I thought was, and the very few times we ever showed it in terms of a couple of festivals, and it had, terrific response, but it was never seen in America.
When you say it disappeared, what does that mean?
It never had a distribution. I mean, we played like a couple theaters in the country.
But now we have 40,000 streaming services. Like it feels like we could revive it.
Well, I mean, at some point, maybe it'll get picked up. But up until now, it's really not been on those services, or it's basically you can do something. And we did it for $1.9 million, and shot half of it in my house. I mean, so it was about as kind of a homemade movie as you're going to do, and we did it because it seemed fascinating, and we had a great time doing it. Yeah. I thought, Al's work was spectacular, but it's a completely overlooked piece at this point in time.
Did you guys hit a point in your careers where you're like, I've done just about everything that I thought I wanted to do X amount of years ago? What now?
I remember one point in my career, I quit.
Yeah, you quit in the 80s, basically.
Yeah, for about 4 years.
Yeah. People were worried about you. They didn't know what happened.
Yeah, people in the park would say, "What happened to you, man?" I'd say, "Oh, really? I didn't know I was gone from anywhere." "No, man, do a movie." So I said, "All right." So I got encouragement. But what happened to me was, at that point, you kind of reassess things in a way. I had multiple failures. And I was feeling somewhat at odds with. This has happened to me several times in my life. When I was younger and an unknown actor, I had a similar thing. And, happened to me, and I just needed to revive something in myself, whatever it was. So I took to making my own stuff and spending my own money on it, which is not a wise thing to do. But there I was. And shortly I became broke and had to go back to films. But I started making my own stuff, editing, and discovering another perspective on film. So it was fun, but sooner or later I had to go back to work. And I think I revived with Sea of Love. Sea of Love.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I saw that in the theater. I like that movie. Yeah. Harold
Becker did a really good job, and Marty Bregman produced it. So I was back, and as it is, you go through all these stages, but I don't sort of want to do anything anymore that isn't that I'm not connected to in some way, and so I can feel the energy to do it. You get the energy from the excitement. That's hard.
But
to
you're
come
one
by.
of the few actors that keeps going back to stage.
I go back to the theater, yeah.
Not necessarily Broadway, but even other things where you've done work you wanted to do.
That's right. I recently did something about Tennessee Williams at the end of his life, which is interesting. Yeah, I do. I have the theater because I started in the theater.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a place I'm most comfortable. Although I've learned a lot about films, I work with Barry all the time. I'm always constantly calling him up and saying, "What are you doing next, Barry?"
Why do you guys get along so well?
From me, I think look, I mean, you do films, but you want to be able to, there's certain themes that are interesting to you, and in terms of an actor, there's a certain kind of courage to what Al will do. Then he'll try something as opposed to, I don't know if I should do that, if that's, what I mean? He'll just try. We'll keep playing around with things.
Yeah.
And some things will evolve out of that. Maybe it wasn't right, but maybe there's another little clue to something that'd be better. So there's an interaction, and it's kind of like, there isn't an absolute to anything you do in terms of film. You could do it this way and this way and this way. So sometimes we can really play around, and I think we enjoy that experience in the telling of the story.
Let's take a break. We're going to talk about Gillette. I keep telling you, I've been shaving since college. I've been with these guys a very, very long time. You know what changed my life? The Gillette Fusion Ultra Sensitive Skin Shaving Gel. Oh, yeah. Recently, I started using the Gillette Fusion Pro Shield razor as well. I ordered it. I got 4 refillable razors and free shipping, and every 4th order free because I subscribed. And you know what the benefits are? When I shave now, my neck doesn't look like I shaved with a cheese grater. I have a very sensitive neck. Gillette has helped my neck. My neck is nice and clean. Now you can get Gillette Performance delivered to your door. No more getting mad at yourself because you just got back from the grocery store and you realized you forgot to buy blades. How stupid do you feel when that happens? Subscribe today. Pick your favorite razor. Get every 4th order for free. Visit Gillette online at GilletteOnDemand.com. And since we're here, I want to talk about the Black Tux. Oh, they've been with us for a while. I wish they had been around when I went to like 25 weddings in my 20s. The good news is it's around for you with high quality rental suits and tuxedos delivered to your doorstep. TheBlackTux.com makes weddings or special events easier than it's ever been. The Black Tux offers free home try-on so you can see the fit and feel the quality of your suit months before the event. It's completely done online. No trips to the Tux shop required. No tailors with cigarette breath breathing all over you. Ugh. The Black Tux lets you create your look or choose from tons of stylish selected outfits. Suits usually retail for $1,200. At the Black Tux, they start at just $95. After ordering, your suit will arrive 14 days before your event. And if anything is less than perfect, the Black Tux will send you a free replacement right away. After you're done, drop your rental back in the mail, shipping free both ways. Get started right now. Visit theblacktux.com/BS to get $20 off your purchase. Again, theblacktux.com/BS. The Black Tux premium rental suits and tuxedos delivered. You can even get one that looks like Al Pacino in Scarface many years ago. Back to Al, back to Barry. So something like Paterno, obviously a tough topic. Just coming out of the gate, and now you're playing this guy that was pretty complicated. Nobody 100% knew what happened, what he knew, what he didn't know. We also don't know how out of it he was. That was always the part that I never got a full answer on, like just how with it was he by the end there? How locked in was he just with anything, coaching the team, what was going on?
Yeah, no, he's 84 years old at that point when all of this happened, yeah.
And then physically, which I thought you did a really nice job in the movie. Like just you seemed old. You seemed like beaten down. Like how much thought do you put in? Well, how much thought do you put in physically with a performance like that? Well, what your body has to look like.
What you do is usually at my age, you just give in to what you're feeling, and you get to be 84 somehow. You know, so much of it is dictated by the role, I think. And Barry would help me. Would tell me occasionally, he's 80, whatever, he's 80 in his 80s. And I would, this last movie I did with Martin Scorsese, it's The Irishman with Bob De Niro and Joe Pesci and Bobby Cannavale. We use there's computers on the camera on the sides and they the various ages. So, physically, you're changed to say, if I'm playing Hoffa, I was playing Jimmy Hoffa at the age of 39. They're doing that on the computer.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, we went to all these tests and things and then I'm playing 48, or even in my 50s, And they'd always say to me, someone would come up to me and say, "You're 39," and so it's called some sort of memory of 39, and your body tries to acclimate to that, and think that way in some ways, and they remind you of it. So when you're playing a character for Paterno, it's no longer a question. The script is well written, and Barry is there, then you're reminded of the age, and so you conform to that state. Really.
Do you worry at all that more information is going to come out after this movie, or do we think we have all the information we're ever going to have from this?
I mean, there may be some things. You never can say never. I think the story we're telling wouldn't be necessarily affected by additional information.
Yeah.
We do it in a 2-week time frame. The whole film.
Yeah.
At the highest and the lowest parts in his life. He wins the 409th game to make him the winningest coach in college football. Literally 7 days later or something like that, he's fired. Caught up in this whole scandal of what happened there. And then ultimately goes in for an MRI and diagnosed with cancer, which will be terminal. This all happens in a 2-week period.
Yeah, when I saw the movie, I thought you compressed it, but you didn't.
No, we just
that
took
was
the
really
2
those
weeks.
14 days.
And that 14 days, that's what it was. So we're concerned with that time frame.
Yeah.
So that's where we focus, which has a fair amount of energy and strength to it, because that was the explosion that information came forward from the grand jury, and it just exploded in, of all places, Happy Valley, Penn State.
What did you want the viewer to feel about Paterno by the end of the movie?
I don't think you ever want to say, this is what I want you to feel. All you want to do is create this time frame, these dynamics, the interaction. How did they act? How did they react? As opposed to say, here's the agenda.
Yeah.
We're going to do this about it. So
feel this way.
You're presenting it, and then you can make, as it goes along, there's all these contradictions. The characters contradicting themselves periodically. We start seeing these layers of all of this that's been, built up and perpetrated in some ways. And we'll just see it unfold in that time frame.
How much research did you do, Al?
Oh, well, as much as you can today without having the real person there.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is an extreme luxury. It's a real luxury. Because I've done it with real people who I've been portraying, and it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Because all you're really, in the end, what you're doing is, and it's basically is kind of revisionist. You're trying to be true. Mainly, you're trying to be true to the text and the story that's telling.
Yeah.
And as close to what you think Paterno was feeling, but who knows? I never met him. I don't know him. So my thinking about it. For instance, there's so much to see on people today. I mean, you can't imagine the footage there is on Paterno.
Oh, yeah.
I had the same thing with when I played Jack Kevorkian. It's all over the place. I mean, you just put on the internet everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so you try to consume that. And there's just so much you can get from it because it's interviews, and usually people are somewhat on guard, although I thought that Jack Kevorkian wasn't on guard. He was just, much more. But Joe Paterno was somewhat in a formal situation usually, And even a couple of things that are in the movie we saw on tape,
right?
And we literally just imitated the scene we saw on tape.
Yeah.
But also too, the fact that you take what's there, circumstance, situation, and you try to you consume it in some way. His state, his finding out about the situation and what he's going through, which is the kind of denial of it, the depression from it, the various emotions he goes through to cope with what he feels first is an unjust accusation, and then starts thinking, is it, and has this sort of
It was like a reevaluation of some of the things that were said in the past.
And he's doing those old guy cliches that people do when they don't want to admit they're culpable.
Yeah.
That breakfast. What was the breakfast line that he keeps saying?
How do I know? I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
Yeah, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. And the lawyer's like, you can't say that.
Yeah, that's part of the denial.
That's right.
Yeah. And also the sense of guilt starts to move in.
Yeah.
And that is upsetting.
Yeah.
And then questioning is really, especially for a guy like Joe Paterno, I would think, knowing football and knowing what I played other coaches before. I mean, I've been playing football coaches, so I to understand that what it takes to be a leader of a team and to make those plays and to think about that what's required of you just to go out there on those Saturdays and play football is so consuming. And in the midst of that, to have this pressure on yourself and this conflict, these concerns, and these actually he learns things about himself.
And one of the things I think is interesting, it's not like he's being questioned by media people, which he doesn't do.
No.
But the idea that he's being questioned by his own family.
Yeah, that's right.
That I think is interesting.
And even his wife a little bit.
You're getting the sons going, well, then, Dad, what happened when you saw so-and-so? Or the daughter saying, did you talk to the boy?
Yeah.
And he's saying, well, I didn't do it. What do you mean? No, who talked to the boy? When she's trying. So what happens is I think it makes it more intimate and more personal rather than you're talking to some reporter. You know what I mean? This is his own daughter wants to make sense out of it. This is her father that she reveres, but she's asking questions. And so were the boys, and so was the wife, which makes it a more, I think, an intimate in those sections that has, I think, that vibrate in a way that I think is more compelling than as just talk to a reporter about something.
One thing that struck me watching it is was this 2011 or 2012? It was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, 12, I think.
And I think as the decade has gone along, some of the red flags and the signs we're just better at as a society of being like, wait, that doesn't look right. I think there was more benefit of the doubt back then. And even if you see something like the gymnast scandal that happened this year, which had a lot of the same beats, right? What's going on? Why is it going this way? These people have spoken up. Don't listen to them.
But here's the add to it. We don't know much about that guy in terms of his principles. But Joe Paterno was known as not only this great football coach, but this man who believed in education.
Yeah.
He believed in the humanities and the integrity of it all. And that was the signature of this man, this great humanitarian / coach.
Yeah.
And so that fall from grace is quite the fall. Not to minimize what happened with the gymnast thing, but he didn't have that persona.
There was that one person. Yeah. And he even says at the end, there's a line where he says something like, this is everything I worked for. It's just gone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You said you played a football coach.
I did in a film called
I'm
Any
aware.
Given Sunday.
I'm aware. I would say you probably I mean, they're playing that at basketball games, that speech, all that stuff. Speech, that movie took a life of its own. This seeing you coaching a football team got me excited for Any Given Sunday too. I think we can make it work. Sequel? No?
A sequel. That's a good thought, Barry.
Jamie Foxx is coaching now, and you're like the GM.
I love it. Oh, you see that? Easy it is to write these things.
That's it.
It's a good sketch.
We did a podcast about that movie a few months ago because one of the things that's really interesting about it comes out in 1999, and a big theme of it is concussions, painkillers, all these things that are wrong with football. And then not till 10 years later did the NFL even admit that concussions were even maybe a link or a bad thing. And meanwhile, it's a major plot line in Any Given Sunday.
No, and at that time, no one thought about it. It was like, I don't know, it's not, it's like it's funny how we don't, some things
they kept saying, this is Oliver Stone again.
It's Oliver Stone being crazy.
So you don't pay attention until all of a sudden you pay attention.
Right.
You know, it's odd. The things are there and we just don't respond.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be the reaction from the Penn State community to this movie?
I don't know. I mean, I think we try to present a pretty good look into it all. But look, I mean, there are people that have certain opinions, and you realize sometimes you're never going to change someone's opinion. Yeah. Sometimes you can say whatever you want, and they'll go, "Yeah, but," you know. So there's an emotional connection. I mean, to think about, there was a riot. Yeah. You know, turning over trucks and things and, you know, setting things on fire when the students were angry that Joe Pa was fired. And that was an emotional reaction. It wasn't an intellectual reaction. It wasn't thought through.
He was like a family member.
He was the family member. He was the father. He'd been there forever. That's all anyone knew.
He graduated 85% of his players.
And he spoke. Yeah. So he was the father, the king of Happy Valley. And so all of a sudden he's dethroned. And so there was an emotional reaction. So how do they respond to it if their emotions are going to play as opposed to some of the other ways to look at it? And in the cool light of the day, I don't know.
When we were doing 30 for 30, we would always talk about, is this a documentary? Is this better as a sports movie? Is it better as a short? Is this anything? Like, we're always trying to, what's the best context for this? This easily also could have been a documentary. And it's one of those meaty content topics that it's like, it could go this way in the right hands, or it could go this way. What did this, when you were developing it, have to have as a movie that would separate it from a documentary?
Well, I mean, a documentary is trying to tell the sequence of events and the people that were in it. This is more of a human drama that's inside of it.
Right.
And I think that's the distinction. You see Paterno thinking about stuff and talking to that. That wouldn't be in a documentary because you wouldn't have any of that. That's where it separates from that. You can have events. Yes, this happened. Here was the arrest, or whatever. But here it's inside of that, between he and his family, between all of the thoughts he's having of his own and how he's dealing with it and how he's processing it. That's where a film lives and breathes.
That was my takeaway, because when I heard they were making it a movie, I was like, they easily could have just made that documentary. I'd be interested to see why this is worth making into a movie. And what stood out was Al's performance as Paterno, because by the end of it, I really felt like you were Paterno. You must have had a little bit of makeup, right? What'd you have? Did you have nose, glasses? What did they put?
I had a nose, but the great John Cazale, who's worked with me for years, you know, he did me in a film called Dick Tracy, if you ever saw it. Yeah, he did the makeup with me there. And he just came up with this nose, and I was reluctant at first. You know, Barry, remember?
Yeah, we looked at it and modified it and did all those things.
And did a lot of changes and adapted to the nose.
You worried it was like a Halloween mask or something?
Well, yeah, of course. You always worry about that.
Yeah.
And then I said, you know what I thought we should do? Let's have a scene where Joe Paterno gets really angry and rips his nose off. I just wanted to get that fucking nose off my face. You know, it just was...
But at the same time, that's a predominant thing about Paterno, was this guy with his nose, you know, and these glasses. You know,
and he can't not have it. It has to be real, because you have to wear. It's like an accent too, in a way. When you develop an accent for a character, you try to absorb the accent, make it a part of you, because once it owns you, you're in trouble. It's got to become a part of you. So you do that with a fancy nose too. You have to, sort of acquire it, and it gets you there, especially if you have a good look at what the great Gary Oldman just did with
that was amazing.
He had those people who put that together. I made this
and you didn't feel if it was a performance behind a mask. You felt that was the man.
Well, what Al mentioned earlier about computers and being able to change the look of people, I think this is going to be the future of movies to some degree. We're going to be able to go back to any old movie and pull actors out of it and put them in other movies.
I know. That's the thing, right? We were saying while it was going on, I had no idea. I never saw myself as in the character of Hoffa. I never actually saw footage of myself as a 39-year-old Hoffa. So I keep wondering, is it going to work? You keep saying, this just seems like I'm not doing anything. But there were things we did. We had to wear certain things.
They
tape things on us.
So they grab onto it.
And we went to a studio here, and these guys are geniuses that do this stuff. They just put us in these rooms with all this lights and told us to just animate and speak as they recorded it on a computer for hours. And then they put it together. And because, it's been tried before and it's been done before. Well, but not, I think this may be another step. Because what's it going to do to all of us,
Well, I remember they made the Godfather video game and you wouldn't let them use your likeness, right?
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I was.
It wasn't a great video game. I think you made the right move.
Was that the thing?
Yeah, no, I think you made the right move.
I just felt so connected to that character at that time. If it were to be, they asked me again, now that I have, my son he makes video games.
Yeah.
He makes them.
You could impress him. Like, I'm going to be in a video game. What?
No, he plays them he's a programmer.
Yeah. We're going to take one more break to talk about Amazon Music. It's the simplest way to listen to the music you love. Discover tens of millions of songs, including the hottest new releases, thousands of curated playlists and stations across all of your devices, just by asking. No ads, no limits, no interruptions. Find them at the tip of your tongue having friends overnight. Just ask to play music for a dinner party. Shout out your favorite bands or your favorite years, or if you're playing a song you enjoy and want to hear more of it or more like it, simply say, Alexa, play me more like this. Engaging with music has never been more natural, simple, or fun. You can even make your own custom playlists. You can do whatever you want. Or you can be like my son and just shout out random artists and see who Alexa plays. My son is a lunatic with the Alexa. He even makes Alexa tell jokes. And let me tell you something, they are all terrible. If you hear the words, hey, Alexa, tell me a joke, a bad joke will ensue. But you know who else will ensue? Good music. New customers, start your 30-day free trial at AmazonMusic.com. That is AmazonMusic.com to start your 30-day trial free. Renews automatically, cancels anytime. Let's go back to Al Pacino and Barry Levinson. Well, I wonder, 20 years from now, somebody, or maybe 50 years from now, somebody will just be able to take all the footage from the Godfather movies and turn it into a miniseries and have all these different plots that
we've talked about that.
I don't know whether I like that or not. But it's going to happen.
It's going to be part of something or other, Yeah. I mean, because it's it'd be like the way the studio system is. It would be like you say, well, this is about this man and this woman or whatever, and then they're trying to make sense out of it. But then if you say it's Thelma and Louise, it's like they need some identification rather than to imagine it. So the recycling that goes on is because they know it, and since it existed, it can exist again, as opposed to something which is wholly original. It gets lost in the corporate sensibility. So it's very hard to make something that is really original. But that's where the benefit of what's going on now in terms of this whole thing with streaming video or HBO is they have to work in a different place.
Yeah.
So they don't compete by trying to do Wonder Woman, etc., although they'll touch on it, obviously. But they can do these pieces like Paterno that a studio now doesn't do.
It's something we could talk about for days about the pros and cons of that, and especially when I grew up with the structure of a film. Usually it was 2 hours, and things happened. It peaked, and then it went into a place, and then it resolved, and boom, you were left with the experience. So that's changed somewhat in the cable shows. As a matter of fact, Netflix produced Irishman.
Yeah.
So when Irishman comes out, which I would imagine is going to be longer than 2 hours.
But it's not a miniseries.
It's not a miniseries. Yeah. So it's not made for that thing that stretches out. So that's another thing I like about HBO is they do miniseries.
They do miniseries.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's why you see nowadays in terms of the awards and things, it's all confused in terms of if you take the Emmys, because the Emmys don't know what to do now. So a miniseries and a film are in the same category.
I actually think
that didn't quite make sense.
I think they should redo the categories.
Yeah,
I think it's much harder to do
right.
a 22 episode show than a 7 in some ways, because if you're doing 22, you can only hit a certain level of quality doing
tonally
22 in a year.
Yeah,
tonally,
yeah.
You have great actors, great scripts, directors are good. They're not working with the size of a film, but tonally, it keeps. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, but it's changing. But it's somehow
it's like a third form.
Yeah, that's right. So
it's another way to do it. It would be like saying, well, we can do Casablanca in a long form.
Yeah,
but it'll be different because you have to expand it out. I mean, it's a different form.
You as an audience are going through different things when somewhere in the back of your mind you know that this isn't it. It's going to keep going, and it's going to so that you get a chance to see it again or whatever. But that changes your. I haven't been able to articulate it, but there is something.
No, I
different
know what you mean.
about
Like 50 years ago, Godfather is a successful book, and people are like, "Oh, who's getting the movie rights?" And then that was during that era when they're buying books and turning them into movies, and it was clearly going to be a movie.
Yeah.
50 years later, somebody might look at that as a 10-episode Netflix series.
That's
$300 million.
That's right.
They might not even think of it as a movie.
No, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I don't know if that's a better or worse place to be.
Well, it's different.
It's definitely just different.
It's adjusting to that kind of thing, both as someone involved in making those and also as an audience.
Yeah.
I asked you before we started taping how it's changed just to have all this stuff that you guys both have done available. Like if you think like in the 90s, cable takes off, there's all these movie channels and you see some stuff you've done is on over and over again. But now you have Netflix, you have Amazon, you have HBO, you have all these different Hulu, all these different places. Yeah. And like Netflix bought the Godfather trilogy, I think in January. And it was just, there it was. And it's like, here's the Godfather, knock yourself out. All three, watch whatever you want. And that's just where we are in 2018.
Yep.
Wow.
Your stuff is just there all the time.
Wow, I didn't even know.
Is that good or bad?
I'm just learning that now.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah.
Hey, it's all good. Really.
No, there's no downside.
What else could
to
it
that.
be?
I mean, I may not be tuning in to watch one of my own kinds of films, but it's nice that they're out there and people can go, see something they didn't see.
You're constantly revived.
Yeah.
I mean, people see, new audiences see things that you did. And so you're in a way, it accounts for some of the relevance.
It does.
Really.
It's an odd thing. TCM asked me to come to Buffalo because they wanted to do the Natural.
Yeah.
In a theater in like 1,000-seat. And I said,
why wasn't I invited? This is bullshit.
I
love
saw
that
the
movie.
Natural in the theater.
And this was in the
What a
theater.
great
They're
thing.
going to in the theater. So I go up there, to go do it. And I said, is there, you got any people who are going to show up? And he said, what do you when we put it online, it sold out in 10 minutes. I said, you're kidding me. So, and the reason is not because people remember from then, because it's been running.
Oh, yeah.
And so people have seen it over the years. And so they have this special presentation where we showed it on the big screen in a theater. And that's because things stay alive and run. In the old days, when a film came and disappeared, that was the end of the film. Nobody would see it again. That was the end of it until TV came along.
There's not a month that goes by that I don't see one film or another that I missed somehow, or it was done 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And there you see something, and it's extraordinary, and you it's very, it's like novels or something you see over again. I saw the other night. The Leslie Howard and Norma Shearer in Romeo and Juliet. It's just there, You see this fantastic thing, and you just turn on TCM, and there it is.
The Natural is a good one because there's certain parts where you go and you're like, all right, I'm staying.
There's
this
always something.
Roy's in the hospital. All right, I'll stay. I'll wait till he gets out. And then Godfather's another one where AMC will just be like, we're running The Godfather all day.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow we're running it again. And they'll do a whole weekend based on this movie that came out 46 years ago. Yeah. It's really insane. People will still watch them.
No, you have
over
no
and over
idea.
again.
It's one thing you don't know. You don't know what lasts. And The Godfather would be an example of something that just goes generation to generation to generation. And there, who would have known when they made, say, Casablanca, Citizen Kane or Grapes of Wrath, that they're going to hang around, 60 years later, 70 years later. I mean, and they do. That's the exciting part, because in some way it's like you're doing something, but you have no idea how it's going to connect. You may think you do, but you don't. No, and then the longevity of it is beyond anything you could ever imagine.
If they remade The Natural now, I think PEDs would be a storyline. People would be wondering, what's going on with this guy? Why is he hitting 450?
How did he knock the cover off the
wall? What's happening? We got to drug test this guy. I have one random question for you.
Yeah.
So you do Heat.
Yeah.
And you have the famous scene with De Niro. Yeah. Our whole staff loves Heat. Heat has aged very nicely. It's like a nice bottle of wine. It's one of the classics. How many takes for that scene? Because there's a whole internet conspiracy theory that they filmed your scene and he wasn't there, and then they filmed his scene and you weren't there. I think you were both there.
Yeah.
You were both there.
That's what Michael did. Michael Mann, they had 2 cameras.
2 cameras, but you're looking at each other the whole time.
We were right there together.
Okay, so I just wanted to end that internet conspiracy now, because over the years it's been like, no, they shot it. It's a stand-in for the other ones.
No, at least that's what I recall. You'd have to ask Bob too. I mean, get verification on that. No, it's for sure. Yeah. I know that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big moment. That was like 2 of the guys going head to head.
Apparently, they weren't together in the taxi.
Man, the taxi scene, Marlon and Rod Steiger,
They were for the 2-shot, but the singles, they were, it was done. Brando's side, Steiger was, off camera for it. But then when they did Steiger's side, I think Brando was seeing some psychiatrist or something, and he'd have to leave at a certain point, and they shot it separate.
Well, with Marlon, I remember that story, and I remember I was a young actor doing the scene with Marlon, and it was to do some scene in the hospital, and I remember thinking, well, because he was a real icon to me and an inspiration to all of us, and me especially. So I felt I was better off not having him there because I could relate to some image I had of whoever my father, whatever I was thinking about at the time. But here it is. He said, Marlon wants to stay to be your off camera. And I thought, how do I get out of this? There's nothing I can do now. I thought for sure he wouldn't be there because I had heard he wasn't there for Steiger.
Oh, wow.
But he was there for me. And I thought, oh, no. So I just said, I'll go with it. And did the best I could. But
and your generation.
It was wonderful that he was there.
It was fantastic.
Very supportive.
Your generation, revered him, right?
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
I mean, there was nobody even close to him.
No. Because he just burst in there with Streetcar especially, and he did stuff that we, as the young actors, we had never seen anything like that. But oddly enough, as you go on and you keep acting or doing this that we do, and you see things. Like I see things on television, like I see the old movies, and you start seeing from whence Marlon's stuff came, the effect. But he was an innovator, an extraordinary spirit that came on.
I loved One Eye Jacks that he directed.
Yeah.
The only film he directed. And
what year are we talking about? 60s?
This was about 1961, maybe, because there's these guys in Baltimore, and we all used to quote the lines from the movie.
Yeah.
And he was there's a great line where he shoots and kills this guy in a bar. He's a cowboy, with a gunslinger, and he's sitting on the bar, and Carl Malden, walks in and said, he sees the dead guy, said, what happened here, kid? And Brando says, he didn't give me no selection, Dad.
Isn't that great? There's another line in there where he says to Carl Malden's character, who's absolutely hateful in the movie. He's wonderful in it, but he makes you really loathe this guy. And Marlon looks at him and says, Dad, you're a one-eyed Jack in this town there. I've seen the other side of your face. I mean, you make a movie just to do that.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
Just say that line.
Movies have changed so much, but on the other hand, they really haven't changed, because even you look at The Godfather and they're making that and everybody's like, this could be a disaster. Why'd they
sure.
pick that young Pacino kid as the lead guy?
That was the whole thing.
It's like a whole year of that, right? And we still have that now. That still happens in 2018.
Oh, sure.
Oh my God, the budget's so expensive. Why'd they do this?
Well, you
it's
told
gonna
that
suck.
story that the studio was ready to fire you at any given time, right?
Well, for sure. They were going to fire me. And this is the only movie I've ever done. And imagine there I was, it's like a first movie. And I was just completely innocent. I didn't know what was going on. And I every time I did a take, I'd hear people giggling, like the crew and stuff, like snickering, like laughing, because I had a reputation of being so bad in this film, and because I wasn't really doing anything. I guess I had some idea that I should start, low key, whatever I was doing. It just wasn't striking any note. And Francis knew it, and he took me out one time. He asked me to dinner, at which he was sitting with his family around a table, and I came in. And I thought he was going to offer me the chair, but I just stood there. And he just said, I had a lot of faith in you, Al. And he was really, he was under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what's wrong? I don't know what I'm doing. He says, I put some rushes together. And I want you to take a look at them. I want you to go to Paramount. It was remember that big Paramount building?
Yeah, that's 5 minutes from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but this was in New York. I met him in a place called the Ginger Man at that time. And so I said, okay, I'll go. I'll take a look. He says, yes, why don't you do that? So I thought, I think I'm done. I think that's it. I was there for about a week and a half.
You're almost like a quarterback who's might get yanked for the backup.
Right. Exactly right. And I know that it's over. So they must be preparing. So I took a look at what I saw, and I knew that it wasn't really terribly interesting at all. I looked kind of weird and I didn't know but at the same time, it's what I had planned. And I couldn't articulate to Francis. I was too young. I didn't know how to articulate to him.
But didn't you say that
I was going for something?
Didn't you say the key was when you finally shot them in the?
No, that was Francis. Francis thought, knowing me, he thought, and he moved that scene up.
Yes,
that scene was scheduled for later on.
Did he do that for you?
He did it, to save the part for me.
Wow.
So he moved the scene there. So that if the studio, he thought that if the studio saw that scene
with Michael
shooting, they would keep me.
Louis' Restaurant.
That was just totally brilliant that he did that.
It was a great decision on his part, because then they can say, "Oh yeah, I can see he's a gangster."
Right.
Yeah.
And up until that point, he's a
young
man.
I never thought of Michael as a gangster. I never, till this day, I still don't think he was a gangster. But he was the mafia chief. But he was like in his makeup, that wasn't his style.
No,
his style was a different thing.
But that was a scene
college
with
grad.
a gun.
He came. Huh?
That was a scene with a gun.
Yeah.
So therefore, it was.
And it's smart of Puzo to have made him a soldier, a hero in the war.
I always thought you were playing that so that the character evolved during the movie.
Exactly.
But you just couldn't articulate it to him.
I couldn't articulate it to Francis. It's like saying to a director, "Don't worry, I'll get there." And the guy says, well, worry, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill us all. The studios are going to stop the picture with you. We can't. Trust you? You know how a director will say, trust me. But you see, that's another thing I wanted to say with Barry.
Yeah.
I just trust him. So it allows me to do so much because I know that he's going to make it, and he's going to tell me things that are going to, and that's, I think you really need that when you work in
how many years did it take to learn that you had to have that trust to get to where you wanted to get as an actor?
Years. And even now, you just, because you're very exposed as an actor.
Yeah.
And you really, and I found, Barry and a couple of others that I could do, I could just do anything. I got a feeling that I trust their censor.
Yeah.
I trust their sensitivity.
They'll tell you to dial it back.
Exactly right.
Ramp it up, whatever you need to do. How long did it take you to learn how to delegate to the actor, but kind of massage him anyway? Or her?
Well, it's a good question. I think because I spent 2 years basically every day with this acting group.
Yeah.
And a lot of improvisational stuff. And
You'll throw yourself in a movie every once in a while.
A couple of times, if reluctantly so. I really don't like it. And I was in an acting group, and I didn't even want to act then or do any of that. But I did early on realize that if you can have an actor sort of do it without saying, do this, try that, and all of a sudden there's too many things to think about, as opposed to just nudge someone this way and that way, we're going to get the most kind of interesting behavior. That was what I was always looking for, that I just believe it's interesting behavior. And then you can modulate it this way or that way. But if you say, when you come over here, stop here, pick up the glass, go over here, and there's too many things to think about, we have to sneak up on it so that it all feels sort of organic. And that was maybe the first thing I thought about.
That's a lot what Sidney Lumet did. See, I did those earlier films like Dog Day, Serpent.
Classics.
And what he would do is he had a way of, he says, direct is direct. I direct. And it's sort of like you go in the bank, you go here, you do this here, you turn around here, then you do that, then you do that. And it's like magic, because all you have to do is what he says, and you're robbing a bank. So this is I remember that. And also rehearsal, because he rehearsed a lot. So we'd be rehearsed in a film. We'd rehearse for weeks on end, and he would start from the first scene to the last scene. Because when you make movies, you film out of sequence.
Yeah.
And so you sort of knew by near the end of the film where you were, because of all the drilling we had for weeks on end about the whole
Sounds like
thing.
Belichick with the preseason.
Yeah.
Trying to put people in game situations.
Yeah.
But every director works in a different way.
There
aren't, it's not like here's the style that you should work in. Everybody has to find their own way of communicating with an actor, that somehow it connects, it starts to work, you know? And so everybody, how did Billy Wilder go about it? What did John Huston do? How did Orson Welles handle it? I mean, everyone has some different way of constructing it and making a connection so that you end up with this unified piece. You can't end up with, this is flying over here, this feels like it's burlesque, this is melodrama. You have to have something cohesive.
You worked with Al, obviously. You worked with De Niro. You worked with Redford. You worked with Hoffman. Mm-hmm. You worked with Cruise. Did you work with Nicholson? No. So you've worked with most of the greats. Is there a common gene or a common character thread?
Everyone I know was different.
Yeah.
Dustin had his own things, and you have to find a way to accommodate, because he would have questions about something or some moment or whatever, and you had to find a way to make the connection. I remember in Rain Man and one thing, when we did a take very early on, might have been the first day or second day, and I said to him after a take, I said, you seem too depressed, and someone who's autistic isn't depressed. They're busy. They're looking at things. It's like how many lights are on the ceiling, or there's something going on there. And so we said, all right, that's a good idea. So we go to do the take, and now he's looking, et cetera. And Tom's talking to him, whatever, and then looking, Tom's talking, and then we're not going anywhere. I said, all right, cut. I said, Dustin, he's talking to you. He said, but I was staring into the lights. I got so lost with the lights, I didn't hear what he said. I said, well, we can't have
swung too far.
He went too far. We can't do that. And so I said to him, well, he's talking. You just don't want to pay attention to him, but you know what he's saying, but you're more involved in the lights. And that's where, if you ever watch the movie, you'll hear him going, yeah. Ray, do you want to do this? Yeah, but he's busy doing it, but he knows he's there. He's tethered to this person. And until he really pays attention to what he's saying, then he may not want to do it. But he knows there's a voice, but he doesn't want to pay attention. And if that was the way we were able to find that, so that he can be busy and not depressed. And that little teeny thing was able to anchor it. Otherwise, Tom would be talking to himself forever.
Al loves this stuff.
Well, I
can listen to people talk about acting forever.
It reminds me of John Cazale. You remember John Cazale?
One of the all-timers.
He was
wonderful.
One.
Greatest IMDb on the internet.
It was an incredible thing. It was just so much I learned from him and working with him. And during Dog Day, there was this thing. Sidney was setting up a scene or something in the bank, and John and I in it. And I had worked with John. I worked with him all the time. We did theater together.
Yeah.
We did, you
guys kind of grew up
I've known
together.
him since I was 19. He used to work at Standard Oil, and I met him. We were messages at Standard Oil, and there he was. And I liked him from the moment I saw him. I just thought, he actually, he was with Meryl. He lived with Meryl Streep. And he met this girl, Meryl Streep. And he said to me, when they came to me, he says, Al, I met this girl, and he was with somebody, I think, his own a girlfriend he had, I think. Because I met this girl, and I'm in love. I'm totally in love. And then he said, she's the greatest actress in the world. I thought,
and she hadn't even done anything yet.
I mean, she hadn't done anything. Yeah. I didn't know who she was. I thought, this is love, right? It turns out he was right. But there we were in the bank. And he says to Sidney, because he says a line, he says, I'm not a homo. Why is she calling me a homosexual on the TV? I'm not a homosexual. And he turns to Sidney and he says, why do I say that? And Sidney is, very considerate, very pro actor, and he says, well, you say it, and he says, and then John says, well, no, I don't think so, because so-and-so, that doesn't work. Why would I say it? He said, and then Sidney came up with another elaborate, because he was so smart, he'd come up with these answers. But I knew what was going on, and I knew it was going to be a while, so I would take a walk. I took a walk outside, I came back, they're still at it. Finally, I hear Sidney Lumet says, you say it because I tell you to say it. That's why you say it. He said, well, why didn't you say that in the first place? and that's
amazing.
That's crazy. But it's all these stories remind me of things that.
He was the great lost actor of your generation. I mean, he only made what, 5 movies? I think he went 5 for 5 with his movies.
I know. This guy, did you know John at all?
I didn't.
Barry? Oh my God. What an artist. And he even said, we've got to stop working together at one point. Because
you did,
I loved
4
him
or
so
5
much.
with him? And you killed him? You killed him in Godfather 2?
Yeah, I killed him in 2.
I thought
you had somebody kill
that
him.
conversation about going somewhere, another country, or that's a killer little thing. Yeah. I mean, that's so. What I love about it, it's a bank robbery. Yeah, Wyoming to go to Wyoming. That what I loved about that moment is, yes, it's a bank robbers doing all that, but they're having these other conversations that are so delightful and inform the character in a way to an audience that you understand this. You understand
subterranean.
And that's what's so great about it, as opposed to, you can never just do plot, and information. Inside of it, there has to be this kind of behavior. Then that tells you more about the characters. Yeah. About where they're going to go fly to, etc. And that little thing tells you so much about character behavior that really informs a movie.
Well, remember Tarantino did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and people were like, wow, this thing he's doing with the characters where they're about to commit a crime, but they're talking about McDonald's. It's like, yeah, that's from the 70s.
Well, he said to me one time, I mean, he might have just be complimenting me in ways when I said something about in Reservoir Dogs, and he said, to me, it was really doing Tin Men with Guns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, that's interesting, Anyway, it's what he had passed on. But so he had that kind of behavior going on.
During Dog Day,
this
great AD, Bert Harris, you've heard of him?
Yeah.
Bert Harris. He was Sidney's assistant director.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I love about films when they're active and alive, because I was there and I was about to go out into the street and start talking to the crowd, And Bert just comes up to me, whispers in my ear. He says, say Attica. So I said, Attica? He says, just say Attica. Go out there and say Attica. Because what had happened at the time, you remember, Barry, there was this big explosion in Attica prison where they killed these prisoners, etc. So I just went out. It was not in the script. But I went out there and I started saying to the crowd, Attica, Attica. Remember Attica?
Yeah.
Right? They all start screaming, yes, and it became this scene. And it happened right in the moment. So it's that kind of stuff that you keep your tentacles out for that somehow, if that gets in the air, if that antennae is out there for something that can happen. And it's harder sometimes when you don't have the time or you haven't had the rehearsal time because you're trying to get through the day.
Yeah.
But that's the general, the kind of thing that could happen with
well, those things that catch on.
Yeah. I mean, that audience, those extras, all those actors and people out there, they didn't know about it. They just started going when they heard Attica. And then Sidney incorporated into the film. But that came from an AD.
Wow.
A very smart guy, by the way. Very high film IQ. And he would say other things to me periodically. Just so there's a kind of freedom when there's a looseness on the set with Sidney. Always.
When you're doing The Natural, did you make up anything up on the fly?
Yeah, I mean, as I remember, there's a scene between Farnsworth and Brimley, because you see coaches sitting in an afternoon while practice is going on, and they used to, because they knew each other so well, and they were doing. He mentioned he'd start to hum a song, and he'd say, "That's blah blah blah," the name of it, whatever, and I said, "Why don't we shoot that? Why don't we just shoot that? It's like a lazy afternoon, they're having practice and the two guys there." And so they did that where they do name that tune. They're humming it and they're having a good time with one another. I just put the camera on a shot for 5 minutes and let them just do whatever they did and mixed it into the film.
Yeah, that movie
it's one of the things that jumps out at me that I can remember off the top of my head.
That movie has some good just what baseball is like day to day moments in it.
Because you want to put a little in
the laziness
there,
of it.
And at the same time, you got this extravagance of hitting a ball into the towers and and all that aspect to it. But there is this little intimate moments that you try to find in anything, because I think it somehow it allows an audience to connect to inside of the characters.
I once, in 2001, I wrote a column trying to figure out what Roy Hobbs' stats were that season. And based on all the hits and his slumps and all that stuff, I think I had him at 390 with 45 homers and 2/3 of a season or something. He definitely was good, though. This was great. I really enjoyed this. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Paterno comes out. What day? What's the day?
April 7th, I believe. HBO, 8 o'clock.
April 7th. Oh, man, that's 3 days before the Andre the Giant documentary. It's a big week, yeah. That's going to be a good week for HBO. Yeah, we did a movie, a documentary about Andre the Giant.
I saw some ads on it.
Yeah, you don't have an Andre the Giant story, do you, Al?
No.
I mean,
I wasn't in The Princess Bride. Was I?
I don't know if you ever ran into him in New York City or everything, drinking Beaujolais or who knows. All right.
No, I missed him.
Good luck with the movie. I thought it was excellent. I think that's a really hard subject to pull off. And,
Thank you.
Thanks.
I
I
was really into it.
Great.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks to ZipRecruiter. Don't forget to check it out at ziprecruiter.com/BS. Thanks to the Recapables podcast. Subscribe right now. You can hear me and Mallory Rubin talk about Billions. Speaking of Billions, don't miss the awesome new season of Billions. This show, Entertainment Weekly, calls, quote, devilish fun, unquote, with new episodes Sunday at 10, 9 Central, only on Showtime. My listeners can get an extended 30-day free trial of Showtime to catch up on the first 2 seasons of Billions by entering code BS at getshowtime.com. Offer expires April 15th. The next time you hear from me, oh yeah, Durant Simmons 5. It's happening. Going to San Francisco. God knows how long it's going to be. It is running probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday morning. Not sure yet. Be ready. Kevin Durant back on the BS podcast. Until then. Cast 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 until then.